Good afternoon and welcome back to the stated meeting of April 22nd, 2020. We will now have the adoption of minutes by Council Member Powers.
Thank you. Thank you, Majority Leader. I now move the minutes of the stated meeting of February 11th, 2020 and February 27th.
Councilmember Powers.
Yes.
Can you please pause?
Yes.
Madam Majority Leader,
Yes.
I ask that you please state that the meeting will stand at ease.
The meeting will stand at ease at this time.
I believe we're having some technical issues with the feed, which is why we're standing at ease. We want to just make sure that all council members have access, as well as that it is live streaming appropriately. So that is what the staff is working on right now. That is why we are standing at ease.
Madam Majority Leader,
Yes.
the technical issues are resolved. You can now recognize Councilmember Powers.
We will now have the adoption of minutes by Council Member Powers.
All right, second time. I now move the stated meetings of February 11th, 2020 and February 27th, 2020 be adopted as printed.
Thank you. Messages and papers from the mayor.
Communication from the mayor, M230 through M236, mayor's executive budget, expense, capital, and CD budgets and supporting schedules.
Finance.
M237, city debt and reserves.
Received, ordered, printed, and filed.
M238, withdrawing the name of Nisha K. Butler for appointment to the New York City Tax Commission.
Received, ordered, printed, and filed.
Communication from city, county, and borough offices.
M239, communication from the Chancellor submitting the proposed amendment to the fiscal year 2020 to 2024 five-year capital plan.
Referred to finance.
Petitions and communications.
None.
Land use call-ups.
M240, I will now ask the clerk to call the roll for today's land use call-up item. This is just a vote on the land use call-up calendar right now.
Adams.
Aye.
Humphrey Samuel.
Aye.
Ayala.
Aye.
Barron.
I vote aye.
Borelli.
Aye.
Brannan.
Aye.
Cabrera.
Aye.
Chin.
Aye.
Cohen.
I vote aye.
Constantinidis.
I vote aye.
Cornegie.
Aye.
Deutsch.
Aye.
Diaz.
Aye.
Drum.
Aye.
Eugene.
Aye.
Gibson.
I vote aye.
Jonai.
Aye.
Gordenchik.
Aye.
Holden.
Aye.
Kalos.
Aye.
King.
Aye.
Koo.
Aye.
Kozlowitz.
Aye.
Lanceman.
Aye.
Lander.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Levine.
I vote aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Mizell.
Yes.
Menchaca.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Moya.
Aye.
Thank you. Perkins,
Aye.
Powers,
Aye.
Reynoso,
Aye.
Richards,
Aye.
Rivera,
Aye.
Rodriguez,
Aye.
Rose,
Aye.
Rosenthal,
Aye.
Salamanca,
Aye.
Torres,
Aye.
Traeger,
Aye.
Ulrich,
I vote aye.
Vallone,
Aye.
Van Bramer,
I vote aye.
Yeager,
Aye.
Matteo,
Aye.
Cumbo,
I vote aye.
Speaker Johnson.
I vote aye.
Today's land use call-up vote is 50 in the affirmative and 0 in the negative.
Today's land use call-up is adopted. We'll now have communication from Speaker Corey Johnson, and I would like to thank him for his incredible work in keeping this body together and organizing this unprecedented meeting today. Speaker Corey Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. Good afternoon, everyone. I am so proud of the work that we are doing together despite these physical challenges that we are facing right now. And I want to thank each council staff member who has put in countless hours to make this happen. This is an extraordinary stated meeting because it shows the council's commitment to public service. We were elected to serve our constituents in all 51 council districts, and our mission is to come together to create and pass legislation to help all New Yorkers in our diverse city, and that is needed now more than ever. This crisis has exposed so many of the structural, racial, and income inequities that plague New York City. Inequities in our healthcare system, in our governance, and in our schools. And it is my sincerest hope that through this tragedy, we will find opportunities to address these long-standing inequalities to build a better New York City. This is what we owe the more than 14,000 New Yorkers who have died from this terrible virus. And that work begins with this stated meeting today. I mentioned earlier the enormous losses of life that we have suffered as a city in the last month or so, and I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge two former council members who we lost in this pandemic. Arlene Stringer-Cuevas, who represented Washington Heights and is the mother of City Comptroller Scott Stringer, and Noach Deer, who represented Midwood Borough Park in Bensonhurst. We extend our condolences to their families. I also want to express condolences on the passing of Councilmember Salamanca's father. Rafael Salamanca Sr. died of coronavirus on April 3rd, and we are sending you, Rafael, and your family our love. In addition, I want to acknowledge that Council Members Torres, Barron, Levine, Constantinides, Vallone, and Grudenchik, and I believe Ayala, have all been sickened by COVID-19. I am grateful that they are with us today and back to serving their constituents. As we do during each stated, I would also like to acknowledge those who have died from 9/11 related illnesses since our last meeting. Retired FDNY firefighter Steve Brickman died on April 12th of 9/11 related illnesses. He was 57 years old. Sergeant Sean Cameron, a retired member of the department, recently lost his battle with 9/11 related cancer on April 8th. He was 52 years old. I want us to take a moment of silence for former council members Arlene Stringer-Cuevas, Councilmember Noach Deer, Rafael Salamanca Sr., firefighter Brickman, Sergeant Sean Cameron, as well as all of those who we have lost in our city and state and all over the world who have succumbed to this terrible virus. May we please now have a moment of silence. Thank you. Today is Earth Day, and it marks the 50th anniversary of the celebration of our planet and the fight for environmental protections. We are experiencing a terrible public health crisis right now, but we can't forget about the other important work we have to do to protect our planet. And New York City has some of the strongest policies in the country to protect the environment, and the council will continue to push for bold change in this area in order to make sure our city and planet are strong for decades to come. This Friday, we usher in the holy month of Ramadan. I want to wish all of those celebrating a very generous Ramadan. New York City's Muslim community has contributed so much to our cultural fabric. So let us all take this month to remember the contributions of Muslim New Yorkers. And we weren't able to meet, but I hope everyone had a good Passover and a nice Easter during this really important time in our city. And my last item before we get to our legislative agenda, I said it before, but I want to wish a happy birthday to Council Member Ruben Diaz Sr. Okay, let's dive into our legislative agenda. As New York City's affordable housing crisis deepens, urgent action must be taken. The council's voting on a number of items that will preserve and establish affordable housing. I detailed most of those items just a few moments ago during the committee of the whole meeting. So in the interest of time, I will not repeat those descriptions now. But in addition to voting to those items as a full council, we will also vote on several other measures, and they are as follows. A rezoning at 271 Seabreeze Avenue to allow commercial use in Councilmember Deutsch's district. A rezoning at 8118 13th Avenue in Councilmember Brannon's district to legalize an existing office. The Queens Boulevard MIH text amendment in Councilmembers Holden and Van Bramer's districts to facilitate 2 new residential developments, including mandatory inclusionary housing. A health and hospitals lease at the Seaview campus for a residential substance program in Minority Leader Steve Mattio's district. The rescission of a landmark in Chair Salamanca's district, and the landmark designations of Tin Pan Alley buildings at 47 through 55 West 28th Street in the district that I represent. Also an amendment to a previously approved tax exemption at Cooper Square MHA for property in Councilmember Rivera's district to allow community facility use for 327 affordable cooperative units in a community land trust. With that, I turn it back over to you, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Speaker Johnson. We will now move into discussion of general orders. We will first recognize council members who signed up by email, and then recognize members who wish to speak by using the raise hand function in Zoom. Just want to remind all members to raise your hand, and please wait for remarks for our Sergeant at Arms to announce he has begun the countdown clock. The Sergeant at Arms will alert you when your time has expired.
And just to remind folks, this is to speak on the items that we are voting on today.
Madam Majority Leader.
Yes.
Council members Rodriguez, Ampry Samuel, and Van Bramer are the first to sign up.
We will begin in the order that was just spoken of.
Councilmember Rodriguez, your time is starting now.
Yes, one is the one led by Speaker Johnson and Councilmember Kalina Rivera on the 75 Mile Street that we should be dedicated more to pedestrians and cyclists. I would like for all of us to join into that effort. Other cities have done it. New York City should do it too. This is an opportunity that as we are celebrating Earth Day, we should show our commitment to dedicate more streets to pedestrians and cyclists. Second, I would like to also say thank you to Councilmember Constantinide for allowing me to be a co-prime in the resolution that we are calling to support Senator Gennaro and Senator Gustavo Rivera, who are looking to get the state legislature to pass a bill and for the governor to sign that will provide free rent for 3 months to tenants and small business owners. Hoy yo quiero, pedirle de que todos apoyemos el paquete de leyes que estamos buscando apoyar a las personas que son víctimas de este coronavirus, entre ellos uno que busca dedicar espacio a la carretera, en el día de hoy celebrando el Día de la Tierra, para peatones y ciclistas, y el otro que es una resolución que junto con los senadores Gustavo Rivera y Gennaro estamos buscando de que la legislación de Albany pase una ley para proveer renta gratis a los inquilinos y pequeños negocios que están sufriendo por el coronavirus. Esperamos de que la legislación vote esta ley y que el gobernador la firme, y le pido a que todos los concejales me apoyen, nos apoya Constantini y a mi persona en esta resolución que busca renta gratis a personas que son los inquilinos y dueños de negocios. Thank you.
Madam Majority Leader, I just want to thank you, Councilman Rodriguez. I just want to remind members, we are discussing now, this is a discussion of the things that we are voting on today. For other items of bills that are being introduced, if folks could hold that until general discussion at the end of the meeting, as we always do at the stated meeting of the council, that would be the best time to discuss bills that are being introduced or other items. I turn it back to you, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you. And our next council member that was identified to speak.
Thank you, everyone.
Council member, your time is starting now.
In the interest of time, I've posted my statement to social media, and it was in reference to the vote that we just took during the committee of the whole. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Next.
Council member, your time is starting now.
Thank you. First, I want to say that on this Earth Day, there are a few things that we can do as important as ending car culture as we know it. So I wanted to particularly praise Speaker Johnson and Councilmember Rivera for their bill and for their legislation calling for 75 miles of car-free roads in the city during the crisis. But I also want to say that we should begin by closing the south outer roadway of the Queensboro Bridge, which has been an immediate crisis affecting so many people. We can do that, and we should do that already, if not before that. And I just also want to say I'm calling in from the great borough of Queens, which might be one of the hardest hit places in the world. But there's no place I'd rather be than in this borough with the greatest people on the face of the earth as we fight through this crisis in Queens. And lastly, before I joined this call, I joined a Zoom funeral for Myra Morris, who was someone who helped raise me. The first Zoom funeral I've ever had to attend. And he was my constituent, but he also helped raise me, the father of my childhood best friend. So he's being buried as we speak. So I want to say on behalf of Myra Morris and all of those that we've lost, you're in my heart forever, and I am forever grateful for the role that you played in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Madam Majority Leader, the next 3 speakers are Council Members Miller, Cabrera, and Menchaca.
Thank you.
Councilmember Miller, your time is starting now.
Did we unmute Councilmember Miller?
I have restarted the clock whenever you're ready, Mr. Councilmember Miller.
Hold on one second. I don't see. Councilmember Miller, are you there? Let's go to the next council member, and then we can go back to Councilmember Miller.
Councilmember Cabrera, followed by Menchaca, followed by Miller.
Councilmember Menchaca, Councilmember Cabrera, your time is starting now.
Yes, for the interest of time, I'm going to do a pass. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Menchaca.
Councilmember Menchaca, your time is starting now.
Thank you all. And I want to just go a little bit further in my statements around the land use items. There are 16 land use actions. I was able to connect with some of you about what those actions are doing in the districts that you represent, and really just to offer support. I think what's really important here, that the work that had happened before each of these land use actions were in pre-COVID times, and I just want to continue to ask that question. Community boards made decisions in pre-COVID times, and COVID has transformed everything, and so I want to just keep mindful of that. The work that our neighborhoods do every day to support that work at the neighborhood level is just so important, and our work to connect to that is great and important as well. So you all know that ULURP is not my favorite thing in the world. I think I have a lot of issues with it in general. So I prefer that we really spend time thinking about it, and we want to think about it with you on the ground. And so with that, I vote aye.
Thank you, Councilmember Menchaca. Do we now have Councilmember Miller available?
He's not available yet.
Okay, who's next?
No other members have signed up for discussion of general orders.
If Councilman Miller comes back, he can, of course, make his statement when it is the time to vote during his voting time. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we will allow Councilmember Miller to speak at a later time. We will now move on to the report of special committees.
None.
Reports of standing committees.
Report of the Committee on Land Use, LU 617 and Reso 1290, Seaview Campus.
Coupled to general orders.
LU 618 through 622 and accompanying Resos, Tin Pan Alley.
Coupled to general orders.
LU 623 and Reso 1296, Landmark Designation Rescission, PS 31.
Coupled to general orders.
LU 627, 271, Seabreeze Avenue.
Approved with modifications and referred to the City Planning Commission pursuant to Section 197D of the New York City Charter.
LU 630 and Reso 1297, 13th Avenue rezoning.
Coupled to general orders.
LU 631, Queens Boulevard text amendment.
Approved with modifications and referred to the City Planning Commission pursuant to Section 197D of the New York City Charter.
LU 640 and Reso 1298, Cooper Square.
Coupled to general orders.
Report of the Committee of the Whole. Intro 1854, Downtown Flushing Transit Hub bid.
Coupled to general orders.
Pre-considered LU 646 and Reso 1299, 1898 Harrison Avenue.
Coupled to general orders.
Pre-considered LU 647 and Reso 1300, Grace Senior Housing.
Coupled to general orders.
Pre-considered LU 648 and Reso 1301, HP Morningside Heights.
Coupled on general orders.
Pre-considered LU 649 and Reso 1302, Turin House.
Coupled to general orders.
Pre-considered LU 650 and Reso 1303, Schreiber.
Coupled to general orders.
Pre-considered LU 651 and Reso 1304, East 169th Street.
Coupled to general orders.
Pre-considered LU 652 and Reso 1305, Amron House.
Coupled to general orders.
Pre-considered LU 653 and Reso 1306, Belmont Daniel.
Coupled to general orders.
Pre-considered LU 654 and Reso 1307, Manhattan Avenue Apartments.
Coupled to general orders.
LU 616 and Reso 1308, East 7th Street.
Coupled to general orders.
LU 626 and Reso 1309, Gansevoort Street.
Coupled to general orders.
LU 628 through 629, Grand Avenue and Pacific Street rezoning.
Approved with modifications and referred to the City Planning Commission pursuant to Section 197D of the New York City Charter.
LU 637 through 639 and accompanying Resos, Rochester, Sudan.
Coupled to general orders.
LU 641 through 642, 52nd Street rezoning.
Approved with modifications and referred to the City Planning Commission pursuant to Section 197D of the New York City Charter.
LU 643 through 644 and accompanying rezos, 90 Sand Street rezoning.
Coupled to general orders.
Reconsidered LU 655 and reso 1315, 364 Avenue of the Americas rezoning.
Coupled to general orders.
Pre-considered LU 656 and reso 1316 River Crossing.
Coupled on general orders.
Pre-considered LU 657 and reso 1317 461 Alabama Avenue.
Coupled on general orders. On the general order calendar.
LU 627 and reso 1318 Seabreeze Avenue.
Coupled to general orders.
LU 631 and reso 1319 Queens Boulevard.
Coupled to general orders. And at this time, I'm asking the clerk to please have a roll call vote on all of the items coupled on the general orders calendar, all the items that we just went through. Mr. Clerk, I'm requesting a roll call vote on all of those items.
Mr. Speaker.
Adam.
Yes, Mr. Parliamentarian.
Before we begin our roll call vote, I believe Councilmember Miller is now back on the line. We may want to give him an opportunity to speak before voting.
Yes, before we vote, I would like to recognize Councilmember Janique Miller to speak.
Councilmember Miller, your time is starting now.
I'm sorry. Could we put that to general discussion?
Yes, sir.
Greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. I request a roll call vote on all the items on today's general order calendar, Mr. Clerk.
Councilmember Adams.
Aye on all.
Ampry Samuel.
Aye on all.
Ayala.
Aye on all.
Barron.
I vote aye on all, and I do request to be added to the general discussion law. Thank you.
Borelli.
I vote aye on all.
Brannan.
Oh, aye on all.
Can we please
Cabrera.
cell phones to vibrate, please?
Aye on all, and please add me to the discussion list. Thank you.
Chin.
Aye on all.
Cohen.
Aye.
Constantinidis.
Aye on all, and please add me to the discussion list.
Cornegie.
Aye.
Deutsch.
Aye on all.
Diaz.
Aye on all.
Drum.
Aye.
Eugene.
Vote aye.
Gibson.
I vote aye.
Jonai.
Aye on all.
Gordenchik.
Aye on all. I responded for the discussion list, so if I'm on it, good. If I'm not, please add me to it. Thank you.
Holden.
Aye on all.
Halos.
Aye on all.
King.
Aye on all.
Koo.
Aye on all.
Kozlowitz.
Aye on all.
Lanceman.
Aye.
Lander.
Aye on all.
Levin.
Aye on all.
Levine.
I vote aye on all.
Lewis.
Aye on all.
Mizell.
Yes.
Menchaca.
Aye on all.
Miller.
Aye.
Moya.
Aye.
Bill?
Yeah.
Perkins.
Vote.
Councilmember Colby. Councilmember Perkins, how do you vote?
I vote aye on all.
Powers,
Aye on all, and Steve Levin, your child is adorable.
Reynoso,
I vote aye on all.
Richards, Councilmember Richards.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Rivera,
Aye.
Rodriguez,
Aye.
Rose,
Aye on all.
Rosenthal,
And all. And Councilmember Levin, your child is wonderfully distracting. Thank you.
Salamanca,
Aye on all.
Torres,
Call Councilmember Torres again.
I vote aye.
Councilmember Torres. Thank you.
Hello?
We got it,
Yes.
Richard.
Traeger,
I vote aye, and please add me to general orders.
Ulrich,
I vote aye, and I hope everybody stays safe and healthy.
Thanks, Eric.
Vallone,
Aye on all.
Van Bramer,
Aye on all.
Yeager,
I vote aye on all with the exception of intro 1854, in which I abstain, and I vote no on land use items 618 through and inclusive of 622, consistent with my position that I stated before in the council that land markings without the owner's consent constitute an unconstitutional taking under the Fifth Amendment. Thank you.
Matteo,
I vote aye.
Cumbo,
I vote aye.
Speaker Johnson.
I vote aye on all. And I ask the clerk to read the results on today's votes on the items on the general order calendar.
The vote on all items for today's general order calendar is 50 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and no abstentions, with the exception of introduction 1854, with a vote of 49 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 1 abstention, and land use items 618 through 622 and their accompanying resolutions, with a vote of 49 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and no abstentions. Land use calls remain unchanged.
Thank you. The items on today's general orders calendar are adopted. Introduction and reading of bills.
All bills have been referred to committees as indicated on today's agenda.
Thank you, Speaker Johnson. There are no resolutions on today's calendar, so we will now move into general discussion. As a reminder, please wait until the Sergeant at Arms begins the countdown clock before you begin your remarks.
Madam Majority Leader,
Yes.
Council members Miller, Adams, and Chin are the first to have signed up.
Okay, we will begin with Councilmember Miller.
Councilmember Miller, your time is starting now.
Thank you, Majority Leader, and it is so great to see all my colleagues out here and out in the struggle, continuing to work. As we know, COVID-19 has taken an awful toll and an immeasurable toll on our city, state, and our country. Yet, despite this devastation and disarray that we have suffered, the one constant throughout this ordeal has been our city's workforce. Our municipal and essential workers have once again stepped up. As I often say, as the chair of civil service and labor, it is the men and women of our city's workforce that give this city value. It is the reason why 65 million tourists, Amazon, Google, and so many others want to come to New York City. These brave public and private employees have braved this disease with remarkable courage to preserve our health, safety, and our way of life, and have done so through great perils and personal costs of their own. Whether in times of prosperity or crisis, the inherent value of these workers has always defined our city's greatness. The majority of them are among the 5 million men and women of color who represent the council's, New York City's Committee on Civil Service and Labor, and the committee, the council's Black, Latino, and Asian caucus. The sad commentary is that for all that they have given to our city, that we have received far less in return. And they continue to bear the brunt of the COVID-19.
30 seconds.
So once again, once we emerge from this side of the pandemic, we must commit to addressing and resolving these racial and social economic disparities in the healthcare, transportation, financial, and educational infrastructures within the communities of color, which are not reflections of inner city poverty, but generational and structural racism that persists and government neglect. And so I'd like to wish everyone thank you, and Ramadan Mubarak.
Thank you, Councilmember Miller. Next speaker.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader.
Councilmember Adams, your time will start now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Majority Leader, and hello to all of my colleagues. I miss being in the same room with all of you. I am so pleased to introduce today and be a part of the package that encompasses a small business COVID-19 bill, which I encourage my colleagues to sign on to. This bill would make threatening a commercial tenant based on their status as a COVID-19 impacted business or person a form of harassment punishable by a civil penalty of $10,000 to $50,000. Unfortunately, thousands of businesses in our city are suffering as they've been forced to close due to COVID-19. As availability of federal loans is limited, many businesses are unable to pay their rent, and this leaves them vulnerable to harassment from landlords looking to find ways to collect or get the tenant to voluntarily abandon the property so they can find tenants willing and able to pay higher rents. The threat of harassment will particularly impact the city's small, independently owned and immigrant-owned businesses, many of which were operating on thin margins and struggling to pay rent even before this crisis. Today, also, along with Councilmember Cornegie, we're introducing a deed fraud bill, which would require reporting on complaints received and investigations regarding recorded document fraud. Homeownership is a part of the American dream, but in times of financial uncertainty, homeowners can become targets for deed fraud. Unfortunately, state law prevents us from doing more rigorous checks before a deed is—
30 seconds.
Until there is a shift in the state law, the City Council must demand updates and accountability from the Office of the Sheriff on the outcomes and strategies of their investigations. I ask my colleagues to support both of these very important pieces of legislation. Thank you so much, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Next speaker.
Councilmember Chin, your time will start now.
Thank you. Thank you, Majority Leader, and glad to see all my colleagues. I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Speaker, to Jason, all the central staff, and all my colleagues for your support during this pandemic, and also to my team for all their hard work in serving our constituents. And to all the frontline workers, the healthcare workers, the first responder, all the essential workers, delivery workers, grocery workers, they're working so hard to keep us healthy and strong. And that's why as City Council, we have to do more to protect them, protect their family, and make sure they come out of this crisis also healthier and stronger. And finally, I wanted to give a big thank you to all the service providers, all the volunteers and donors who have stepped up during this crisis to deliver food and supplies to our healthcare workers, to our seniors, and to our families in need. And I pray that all of us will come out of this pandemic more united and stronger together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Chin. The next three speakers will be
The next three speakers are Council Members Gibson, Vallone, followed by Lewis.
Councilmember Gibson, your time is starting now.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon to all of my colleagues. Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Majority Leader, and every one of you. I join with all of you in first and foremost expressing our thoughts and prayers and condolences to everyone across our city who has lost a loved one, a relative, a family member, a neighbor to this COVID-19 pandemic. Those that remain in the hospital that are struggling to survive, we pray for healing. I am reminded that this too shall pass. And we are New Yorkers, we're tough, we're resilient, and I know we will get through this. We will survive, we will thrive, and we will be stronger than ever. It has been overwhelming, emotionally draining for all of us as we continue to do this work. We take care of our families, our children, we serve our districts. There's so much going on. There's a lot of information. It's being shared, the coordination of services. But I join with all of you in saluting every first responder, essential worker, frontline worker, all of our public servants, men and women that go to work every day to serve the public and risk their lives to protect us and save New Yorkers. I'm reminded that many of our public servants are hardworking men and women of color, predominantly women and women of color, and we salute you every day for everything you're doing. The cafeteria workers at our schools, the crossing guards, small businesses, grocery workers, everyone, we thank you. I think as we move forward and we learn about some of the deficiencies and gaps in services
30 seconds.
and challenges that we faced, I am reminded that a borough like mine of the Bronx has had a higher rate of hospitalization and deaths because of underlying health disparities. So I look forward to working with all of you, my colleagues, as we not only address a COVID post world, but also some of the challenges we faced prior to COVID. Again, my prayers to everyone. I thank you, colleagues, for introducing a comprehensive package today, and I look forward to our continued work. God bless us all. Thank you, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Councilmember Gibson. We will now move to Councilmember Vallone.
Councilmember Vallone, your time is starting now.
First off, I want to thank our speaker, Corey Johnson, and his staff for really putting this unprecedented hearing together and giving us a chance to see our fellow colleagues. Thank you, Corey, for all of that and being our rock for all of us. To myself and the fellow council members who have been struck with this unbelievable disease, the rest of you have really given us the prayers and the health and the love that we needed for our families to get through these very scary times. And it really humanized what every person had to do during this crisis, from the moment you decided you needed to get help, where to get help, and the realization of how dependent we were and are on our first line workers, our responders, our healthcare workers, our delivery workers. My life is completely dependent on everyone who has helped us. So I want to say thank you for my family and for everyone who has really just, from drop things to the door to send us messages. My heart is to everyone who is suffering and has lost someone. Today, there's so much that we need to thank, and I just wanted to congratulate our fellow members for all the pieces of legislation that are in there today, and those who signed on to our resolution calling on the federal government to not continue to forget our co-ops and condos. It's really our last passage of affordable housing, and it's not in any of the relief packages of the PPP loans or the CARE Act. So we're asking the fellow council members to join on it, almost half you are now, so that
30
the
seconds.
next round of financing will include co-ops and condos. That's the resolution that's on today. And my only caveat for the day would be that we tread lightly when we're talking about so many miles of our streets. Yes, Manhattan is different than the rest of the boroughs, and we need to have some space. But what we do temporarily, and that we look to full hearings to talk about impacts from everyone if we were to do anything beyond temporary emergency acts, because we are dependent on those very streets, all of us, not just certain groups. And with that, I want to say thank you. God bless everyone.
Thank you so much, and so glad to see you in good health. Councilmember Lewis.
Councilmember Lewis, your time will start now.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very, very grateful to see everyone and to see everyone well, happy, and healthy. I want to thank all of our first responders and everyone that's just been doing a great work on the grounds in all of our districts and all of our communities. I want to thank you, Speaker Corey Johnson, for your leadership, and I want to thank the Legislative Division for helping me push these two pieces of legislation forward. In interest of time, I'll be really quick. Today I'll be introducing two pieces, Intro 1929, which would create a public alert system to be used in missing persons cases where the person is believed to be in imminent danger, and Intro 1928, which would require the NYPD to compile, send, and post a yearly missing persons report disaggregated by race, age, gender, police precinct, percent of cases solved and proportion of which cases involved of human trafficking. I urge my colleagues to sign on to 1928 and 1929. These two public safety bills can help increase awareness and save more lives. And I also want to thank Councilmember Joe and I for allowing me to co-prime on 1921. I don't know if he's speaking about it today, but it's a very good bill. And I want to encourage everyone to sign on. And thank you so much, Majority Leader.
Madam Majority Leader, the next three members who have signed up are Grodenchik, Rivera, and Powers.
Councilmember Grodenchik, your time will start now.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for their personal concern for myself and my family. This disease is nothing to be trifled with, as many of us have found out, so thank you. I want to thank the Speaker and the entire Council team for putting this together today. It's critical that government function in New York City, and we have shown that that is possible despite what we're going through. I want to thank my own team led by my Chief of Staff, Ari Gershman, for keeping up and helping out many, many people in my district and elsewhere when I was flat on my back. I want to thank our first responders and everybody who is fighting this terrible disaster. I know that we have lost over 10,000 New Yorkers, many of them city workers who have given their lives in performance of their duty, and our thoughts and our prayers are with them and their families at this time. I want to echo the concerns of my colleague and my dear friend, Paul Vallone, and we must remember that New York City spreads out over 300 square miles. Traveling in my district is very difficult by mass transit, even more so these days. I delivered food today on behalf of Common Point in Eastern Queens. None of the people that I delivered to today would be able to get around without a car. Some of them lived almost a mile from the nearest grocery store. So it's a very large city, and we have to remember that. Thank you. In sum, growing up, when I was a little boy, we used to drive along the Cross Bronx Expressway visiting family, and vast stretches of our city were burned out in the early 70s. New York City came back because we worked hard and we were smart, and we will get over this, I assure you. New York City is always going to be a place where people are going to want to come to live, to work, to raise their families, and to retire as well. So let's keep our foot on the accelerator. Thank you very much.
Madam Majority Leader, Council Members Rivera, Powers, and Levine.
Councilmember Rivera.
Councilmember Rivera, your time will start now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to everyone out there who made this happen, especially the staff and to all the first responders and workers who are keeping us safe, healthy, and comfortable. I want to just highlight two bills I'm introducing today. First, legislation that would temporarily require the city to open approximately 75 miles of city streets to pedestrians and cyclists during the COVID-19 pandemic in order to provide New Yorkers with more room for social distancing. Cities across the country, from Boston to Oakland, have taken similar measures, but if passed, we would be the first legislative body to pursue an innovative program such as this. We have seen just this week in reports from urban planners that almost all of our city sidewalks are not safe for social distancing. Our Open Streets bill will increase space for essential workers to commute safely. It will supplement our already crowded parks, which will only become more cramped this summer. And it will bring equity to communities of color that for decades have lacked the open spaces that we are fortunate to have in other neighborhoods. As the chair of the Committee on Hospitals, I encourage all of you, my colleagues in the council, to support the passage of this bill as quickly as possible in order to prevent further infections and further strain on our heroic hospitals and their staff. An Open Streets program, just like washing hands and face coverings, will save lives, plain and simple. The Speaker and I are also introducing legislation as part of the Council's coronavirus relief package, which will temporarily suspend personal liability
30 seconds.
leases and related rental agreements of businesses impacted by COVID-19. This will ensure city business owners don't face the loss of their businesses and personal financial ruin or bankruptcy as a result of this state of emergency. These businesses are closing and losing weeks of income through no fault of their own, and allowing small business owners to keep their spaces will be integral to the city's ability to recover after the virus. I hope you will join us in co-sponsoring these bills and this coronavirus relief package before us today.
Time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Rivera. Now we'll hear from Councilmember Powers.
Thank you.
Councilmember Powers, your time will start now.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, and it's good to see everybody again, even in a virtual setting. I do miss everybody here, and thank you for all the good work you're all doing. And wanted to offer some condolences and some prayers today for those who, unfortunately, we've lost along the way in this difficult moment. And I wanted to offer my deepest condolences to our colleague, Rafael Salamanca, for the passing of his father, as well as to Controller Scott Stringer for the passing of his mother, and also remember the lives of many who couldn't be here, including Councilmember Noak Deer, who I know passed last week, many members of the NYPD, many members of the Corrections Department, and 2 folks in city custody who have passed away, and countless many more. They've been devastating to our city and, of course, to their families as well. And I also wanted to send my thoughts and prayers to the family of NYPD Transportation Chief, William Morris, who I know his family is struggling, and he is struggling as well today. We have so much work to do ahead of us to honor the lives of those who have been lost, but also to save lives and to protect New Yorkers' health and prosperity going forward. And the health is our top priority. We all must follow official guidance. But as we think past this stage of the COVID crisis, that means making tough decisions in our city budget. It means making tough decisions about what our priorities will be, but it means being proactive in helping those. For me, that's meant helping.
30 seconds.
Yep, helping renters immediately, providing rental assistance, finding creative ways to help people be able to pay the next month's rent. It means that we have to advocate for our small businesses who really need our help, particularly those in the hospitality industry right now who are being hit the hardest. And it means we need to do more in our city jails where there have been the highest rate of infections. We've lost officers, and we have people that are incarcerated. So I know we have a lot of work to do. I'll stop there. I see my time's up, but I want to thank everybody for their continued leadership here. And I know that we'll be working together in the weeks ahead to make sure New York will take this very difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll hear now from Councilmember Levine.
Councilmember Levine, your time is starting now.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your leadership, which has been outstanding throughout this crisis. Thanks to all my colleagues for what you're doing in your district and all around the city. It's really quite inspiring. As all of you know, we are about to build an entirely new public health system to prepare us for the next phase of this virus and our fight against it. We are going to have to build a system of mass testing and contact tracing, quarantining, hoteling, isolating, transporting patients, telemedicine, IT. It's almost the equivalent of starting an entirely new city agency, as big as ACS, maybe FDNY. We've never done anything like this in city history. Thousands of employees. It's going to be an extraordinarily challenging undertaking, but it's what we need to do to restart our economy and to get back to something remotely like normal. This is going to touch every one of our districts, especially communities of color, which have been disproportionately hard hit in this crisis. And every one of us needs to have a role in shaping this and delivering it. Our communities need to be engaged in designing this new public health system. CBOs need to be engaged in delivering these services. So my call to all of you is, let's work together on this to make sure that the failures of the early stage in this crisis nationally are not repeated here in New York City when we have one
30
more
seconds.
shot at containing this horrible virus. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Levine, and so glad to see you as well as your family doing better. Next three speakers.
Madam Majority Leader, the next three speakers are Council Members Menchaca, King, and Eugene.
Councilmember Menchaca.
Councilmember Menchaca, your time will start now.
Hi, colleagues, and hi again. The coronavirus continues to be incredibly impactful, widespread across the economic. We just heard about the health stuff from Councilmember Levine. And immigrant New Yorkers, particularly those who are undocumented, they have incredible vulnerability in this conversation. And yet these undocumented workers and immigrant families are largely excluded from state programs like unemployment insurance and the federal relief cash payments that are, and we're supposed to help workers who lost their jobs or got their hours cut. And so my question to us here and to everyone at home, what will the state and the city do to help our immigrant friends and families and neighbors and colleagues? And so the governor and the mayor have already said that they're not interested in using government funding for this. But I'm sure that they know that the undocumented immigrant communities contribute $40 billion a year to New York State's gross domestic product, according to the Fiscal Policy Institute report. And further, they pay more than $1 billion a year in state and local taxes. So again, I gotta ask, what are we gonna do? And what are we gonna do as a council? Meanwhile, the ISIS still terrorizing our communities. They're holding people, including pregnant women, in detention facilities as we are told to stay at home
30 seconds.
and practice social distancing. So with all this, I just want to keep asking ourselves, what are we going to do? And let us not forget that democracy, we cannot assume democracy even in this time, and that the democracy is about participation. And I'm hoping that everyone stays engaged, re-engages, whether you're a community board member, a student, an immigrant, a day laborer, no matter what language you speak or sexual orientation or gender expression, whatever, we need your help.
Time's up.
To maintain this democracy. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Menchaca. Now we'll hear from Councilmember King.
Councilmember
Majority
King, your
Leader.
time is starting now.
Thank you, Majority Leader and Speaker. Thank you for leading today's conversation and your leadership through all this craziness that we're trying to manage. I just want to offer prayers to all the families who are suffering through this pandemic. More importantly, to all of my colleagues, all of us here who are dealing with this in our neighborhoods, in our hearts, and in our households and outside of our households, and praying for strength and health for everyone. I just want to add my voice to Peter Vallone. Paul Vallone, I want to thank you for allowing me to be a co-prime with you with the resolution, making sure that our condos and our co-ops are not forgotten in this, all these fiscal stimuluses that are coming down, and making sure that we take care of those residents. Co-op City, which is the largest NOC in this country, they're suffering right now. So even as we're talking about a COVID package that will make sure essential workers get raises, they're going to have challenges meeting those financial burdens. So I want us to continue to have these conversations and make sure that we can protect everybody, small businesses, big businesses, housing, and so forth. But I also want to lend my voice. Debbie Rose and I, Councilmember Royce, well, the challenge of making sure that summer youth this summer have something to do. We know that the speaker, as you mentioned, the conversation has been about ending it. I'm asking us, maybe we can call on the federal government to do a summer youth stimulus package and making sure children are funded and they're doing something during the summer, whether it's a school project or something to keep them engaged because of the fiscal responsibilities they have to their homes. I'm asking if we can look at something like that and continue that conversation with our youth. And finally, I want to talk about our small businesses, not only just small businesses, but our Black and brown small businesses, for some reason, sometimes get left out of the pot when it comes to getting that funding to our neighborhood, whether it's capacity or figuring out the rules. How do we make streamline it that this billions of dollars that's come down hits our neighborhoods and hits them in real time? So with that, everyone said, I want to wish everyone a happy Ramadan. Councilman Diaz, happy birthday, and blessings and peace to everybody. And thank you again for your leadership. God bless us all.
Thank you so much, Councilmember King, followed by Councilmember Eugene.
Thank you very much, Madam Majority
Councilmember
Leader.
Eugene, your time will start now.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leaders. We all know that we are facing, as a community, as a society, we are facing a horrible, horrible tragedy, the COVID-19 pandemic, that has claimed the life of so many people, that has caused so many pain and suffering in our society, and also that has shut down our economy, our school, our churches, and that have affected also so many parts of our life. But we can say that the part of the devastation is because we were not ready for these type of viruses, this type of crisis. Even after SARS virus epidemic in 2002 and MERS in 2012, we were still not ready. And we put so much stress and challenges on our medical staff, doctors and nurses. And what happened, the people who have been suffering from critical disease before, they couldn't even receive the critical care that they need. That's the reason why I have introduced two pieces of resolution, two pieces of legislation, Resolution 637 and 638, asking that the city and the state and the federal government create stand-alone medical centers and hospitals to handle crises
30 seconds
by infectious disease, epidemic, and pandemic, and to create also a permanent commission to study the effect of the previous crisis, health crisis, on the society in order for us to be prepared. And this commission will be staffed by medical staff, elected officials, and experts in medicine and virology to do research on the impact of the previous medical tragedy. And if when people are infected by virus like COVID-19, so pathogenic, we are going to expose the medical staff, doctors, nurses, and the previous patient. I'm asking all my colleagues to support this two legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your important work. I'd like to have the next three speakers.
Madam Majority Leader, with your permission, I'll read the full list. There have been a number of council members who have been raising their hand, and this way they'll know that they've been recognized.
Fair.
The remaining list is council members Rodriguez, Kalos, Barron, Borelli, Constantinides, Traeger, Lander, Reynoso, Van Bramer, Yeager, Levin, and Cabrera. The next three up are Rodriguez, Kalos, and Barron.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Councilmember Rodriguez, your time will start now.
Thank you. I think that most of you guys know, what I'm gonna say, but for all New Yorkers, it's sad to be in 2020, showing the face of the city of New York, that we have reclaiming that we have the best health system in the whole nation. And yes, when we see the C code, where people have access to the best health services, are those C code or the wealthy New Yorkers. When you look at the numbers and the faces of people dying, God's sake, is the same systematic poverty that we have in the poorest area. You can call it in any elected official C code. I can tell you, like Congressman Serrano district, and Serrano is like the first one poorest in the nation. Congressman Espaillat district is the 11th one poorest in the nation. And you look at the faces of the Latinos and the Black and the Asian, and yes, coronavirus doesn't discriminate. Anyone can get it, and we feel, we really have our prayer for anyone, the 8.6 million New Yorkers. But there's faces of the poorest one. And the question is, what can we do? We have failed. The city has failed. We have built a city of the poor and the rich. And until we address that situation, we will be in the same place 10, 20 years from now. Nosotros, la ciudad, le hemos fallado a los más pobres, a los latinos, a los negros, a los asiáticos. And I call on my progressive New Yorkers, stand up. We need to do better. We can do better. We can save life. And lastly, I would like to show all our support to the responders who they are putting their life to save other
Time's
people's
up.
life.
Madam Majority Leader, Council Members Kalos, Barron, and Borelli.
I'm waiting for the Sergeant at Arms.
Have to be recognized by Majority Leader.
Councilmember Kalos, you're recognized to begin.
Time will start now.
I'm proud of the work that the Council continues to do as the legislative body in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today I'm introducing two bills, one to help essential workers now and one looking ahead in hopes of bringing systemic change and improving access for underrepresented communities to our city's best schools. And you may hear my daughter in the background as all of us adjust to the new normal. First introduction 1923 that I authored with Speaker Corey Johnson and Councilmember Lander to provide just cause protections to all essential workers, from those in healthcare to those in our grocery markets or making deliveries, as we continue to thank and praise all these workers, including cheering them nightly. Many have faced retaliation for speaking out against unsafe conditions and demanding protective equipment to keep them safe in order to better keep us safe. Under this legislation, essential workers would be protected from retaliation or termination without just cause. Second introduction 1924 that I authored with Public Advocate Williams and Council Members Brandon and Cornegie aims to increase access to specialized high schools in our city where Black and Latino students have lost seats over the last 2 decades. The legislation would finally seat every student for the specialized high school admissions test, the SHSAT, unless they opted out. Universal test preparation would also be available. The Education Equity Campaign provided a free 7-week course to nearly 200 students of color, with results that prove this intervention combined with seating every student would improve access. If you're watching online or
30 seconds
and you need help during this pandemic, please reach out and we will be there for you to help. I want to thank the council staff for working even harder from home, my staff, Jeff Baker, Mizat Chowdhury, Malcolm Buterhorn, and countless others. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we lost the Majority Leader. Lance, who's next?
Council Members Barron, Borelli, and Constantinides.
Councilmember Barron.
Councilmember Barron, your time will start now.
Thank you. It's good to see all of my colleagues. You're looking well. Glad to see you. I want to thank the speaker and all of those who worked to make this a reality. This is my first big Zoom conference, and I'm so glad that we're doing something that's so significant. I also want to add my prayers and condolences to all who have been impacted by this, whether you were diagnosed with it or you had someone else was diagnosed. As you may know, Charles and I did have it. We have recovered, although we have not been in the house in about 45 days. We're still staying in. And we want to thank all who have been supportive of us. I also want to mention Minister Abdul Hafiz Muhammad, who passed, and Father Lawrence Lucas, who passed also. This COVID is colorblind, yes, but the systems that operate in this city and in this nation are not colorblind. And the inherent racial inequities that are manifested in our health disparities, in our underfunding through the educational system, through the low family wealth that exists, through the businesses that are so greatly impacted, and through the digital divide that we see are a result of the systemic, historic racism on which this country has been founded. And we hear people talking about that, and we want to make sure that when we come through this, we don't have a worse situation in the aftermath, such as what we saw in Katrina. So I want to encourage everyone to be able to be mindful of making sure that we come out at the other end, we're at a more equitable place. And I want to encourage you to support the Higher Education Committee as we appeal for CUNY to freeze tuition and to maintain the ASAP program, which is nationally recognized, and to implement the food program, which the speaker had so graciously started, and to continue the LINK program, because our children are going to be devastated when they come back to school in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Inez. I'm glad you and Charles are better.
Yes, we're better. Thank you.
Councilman Borelli. Oh, sorry, the Majority Leader's back.
Thank you, Councilmember Borelli.
Councilmember Borelli, your time will start now.
Thank you. I think there was a misunderstanding. I didn't put myself in to speak, but while I have the conch, I just want to say that I hope the council continues to take very direct and deliberate action in supporting line-of-duty death benefits for all essential workers whom we had asked to go to work during this crisis. The MTA took a very positive step in being the first sort of organization to guarantee these for their members. But there are a lot of, correction employees, teachers, nurses, and all sorts of people, EMTs. There were 2 more EMTs that died in the last 24 hours. So please, let's take some definitive steps towards easing the mental burden that potentially leaving one's family destitute must be on the shoulders of some of our essential workers. Thank you.
I agree, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Costa Constantinides.
Councilmember Constantinides, your time starts now.
First, I just want to thank all of my colleagues for all the good wishes to my family, and to really thank all of the frontline workers, essential workers, healthcare workers that have been doing an amazing job under unbelievable circumstances every single day. This is Earth Day today, as the speaker talked about, and last year we passed some very big legislation, and it wasn't about the goals, it's about what those goals mean. We're seeing the impacts of environmental racism and pollution in our environmental justice communities every single day, exasperated. The asthma rates are the breeding ground for COVID, and we're losing lives in those communities. We need to act more boldly. We need to continue to move our agenda forward. We need to move our city forward in a way that protects our environmental justice communities in the long haul, because it is literally life and death. Those communities are the ones that are most impacted. They are the ones that have been bearing the brunt of COVID, and we must continue to do more. So I agree with the speaker, as he talked about in his opening, about needing to double down on our efforts around environmental justice, around environmental work, and ensuring the health of New Yorkers in the long term. And lastly, I'm glad to work with Councilmember Rodriguez in introducing the resolution in support of Senator Gennaris's bill to cancel rent in this critical time. We need to make sure that with all of this that's going on, that no one is losing their homes, no one is being put into debt, and we need to protect all of our New Yorkers from the consequences of what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and so glad to see you doing better. Councilmember Traeger.
Councilmember Traeger, your time will start now.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you to the Speaker, to the staff, to all my colleagues. I extend best wishes and speedy recoveries to all of us and all of our communities that have been greatly impacted. And thank you to our staff, both central and all of our member office staff, who have literally signed thousands of seniors up for deliveries, meals, for helping with unemployment insurance. Our staff is doing amazing work. I want to thank them all, and thank you to the Speaker's staff for keeping democracy going in this crisis. Of course, I want to extend our heartfelt appreciation and thanks to our healthcare heroes, our emergency first responders. And I want to note for the record that there are hospital executives hiding out in mansions in Florida or in the Hamptons, while EMTs in New York City, who are dying, putting their lives on the line, still making $35,000 a year, seeing great pay disparity. We must address that once and for all. And I want to just clarify something for the record. We keep hearing city, state, federal leaders keep referring to schools as being closed. I want to clarify that the work of our educators continue. I speak not just as an education chair, but as a former public school teacher who speaks to my colleagues. It would take me a long time to map curriculum for the year ahead. The work of our educators has been nothing short of extraordinary. To those educators who have lost colleagues, who are grieving in their families, in their school communities, we see you. The fact that our educators have put together curriculum maps online in this new era of remote learning in under a week or 2 weeks, we see you. The fact that you're still teaching and educating while taking care of your own families and grieving losses, we see you. The fact that you're doing wellness calls to your students checking in on their wellness at home. We see you. The fact that educators are raising money from their own pockets to feed their kids,
Time's up.
to feed their students, and to buy them clothes, we see you. And I hope my colleagues, we see them and we hear them in the budget process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your time.
Thank you, Councilmember Traeger, and thank you for your passion and your persistence. I'd now like to call on Councilmember Lander, followed by Councilmember Van Bramer.
Councilmember Lander, your time is starting now.
Thank you, Majority Leader, and thank you, Speaker Johnson. A big thanks to the staff who made this possible, and I also want to echo to my own staff who are just working extraordinarily hard. Colleagues, it is unbelievably powerful to be with you right now. These are some of the darkest times that we will live through, some of the darkest times of any generation, and we're seeing extraordinary pain and anguish in the families who are suffering, in the workers who have to be out there, in people who have lost their jobs or afraid of losing their homes. But we are also seeing some incredible courage, some of the most courageous action we've ever seen, obviously in our emergency rooms and in our hospitals, but by so many of our essential workers as well. And I'm glad that we are back in business today, trying to do our part, inspired by those workers, to honor it and to make sure we live up to what we're saying. So I know that many of you, like me, love going out at 7 p.m. every night and banging pots and pans and screaming as loudly as we can to say thank you to the people who are stocking the shelves in our grocery stores, delivering food and supplies, driving people to work and appointments, and caring for sick New Yorkers in our hospitals and our nursing homes. But let's remember, so many of those people are low-income New Yorkers. They're working in low-wage jobs. They're women. They're people of color. And we might be banging pots and pans, but we haven't done enough to make sure that they've got the pay and the sick leave and the workplace protections and the dignity that they so deeply deserve.
30 seconds.
So I'm proud today, along with the Speaker, Councilmember Kalos and Councilmember Cumbo, to be introducing the New York City Essential Worker Bill of Rights, which will go beyond cheering to make sure that our gig workers have paid sick leave, that workers can't be fired for speaking out about health and safety conditions, and making sure people get some extra pay if they are working for large companies and having the courage to go out and work in this period of time. It's a powerful piece of package of legislation. I really hope you'll join us.
Time's up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Lander. And I stand corrected. We have Councilmember Reynoso, followed by Councilmember Van Bramer, and then followed by Councilmember Cabrera.
Councilmember Reynoso, your time starts now.
Thank you. I also want to make sure that I thank the Sergeant at Arms for all the work they're doing and participating in keeping everything in order. To Lance, we're big process geeks, so love the parliamentarian role. And again, to all the staff, including my staff, that is working hard during this this pandemic. I want to make sure that I state, while this virus sees us all the same, the inequities in our communities have made it very clear that there are certain types of groups of people and folks of socioeconomic status that are being treated unfairly or inequitably in our system. And I think it's going to be extremely important moving forward that business is not done as usual. We are able to start righting the ship of inequity after this crisis. And I hope that many of our colleagues start drawing a line as to how exactly we're going to do that. It is very clear that our neighborhoods of South Bronx, North Brooklyn, and Southeast Queens have the highest rates of asthma in all of the city. And it is and because of that, it is why they're dying at a higher rate than anywhere else in the city. So I think it's very important that we start having these conversations and not concede or compromise in making sure we drive ourselves out of this inequity. I also know that the budget is something we're talking about right now. There are some agencies like NYPD that has not taken the same steps as other agencies like the Department of Education when it comes to cuts that need to happen so that we could start talking about equity again. And then we also have initiatives like Thrive that don't necessarily do the job that we thought they should be doing, that have also not taken enough cuts. So we should really have a conversation about where these cuts are coming from and stop allowing for the initiatives that are supposed to bring about equity to continue to get cut.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Van Bramer.
Thank you very much. Van Bramer, your time will start now.
Thank you. I want to thank the speaker and the entire staff for making this possible. I too want to begin by thanking the members of my staff who have been working nonstop at home since this all began. I also want to recognize the public housing residents, the good folks of Queensbridge, Ravenswood, Woodside Houses, Astoria Houses. Just now we're hearing all of these plans from the governor and the mayor to talk about how we're going to help people in public housing, but that's about 8 weeks later than we should have had a plan to talk about how we were going to help folks in public housing get through this crisis. I also want to talk about the fact that when we talk about essential workers, and I'm proud of the work this council is doing in expanding the definition, but I was raised by a woman who worked in a supermarket, and my stepfather was a janitor who cleaned the floors and the bathrooms at Junior High School 10 in Astoria. Grocery store workers and janitors are essential workers, and so many of them have put their lives on the line during this crisis. Every time I go to a supermarket, I thank profusely the men and women who are working there, risking their lives so that other people can eat. And I just want to say again, thank you to all of the first responders, all of the people who gathered together.
30 seconds.
I'm wearing this tie. As you can see, I mentioned Meyer Morris, who helped raise me. He was a huge Met fan, and this tie, I wore it in his honor. It is a red and blue tie. It is the colors of the Mets. And finally, I want to recognize, because we will rename the street for Tarlac McNeilish, who was a great Irish LGBT activist who died of COVID-19, and I want to recognize him. There'll be plenty more time to talk about his legacy going forward, but thank you to him as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will now hear from council members, and I also am making a correction: Yeager, Levin, and then Cabrera.
Councilmember, your time will start now.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to add my thanks, as been mentioned before on this floor, to the members of the staff of the City Council, particularly Jason, members of the General Counsel team, and the folks who worked very hard to get this meeting off and to get our operations complete. And I also want to thank my own staff who have been working incredibly hard to keep our office operational and to keep serving the people who sent me to the City Council. I think I would be remiss if I don't take a few seconds at least to honor, in more time than I have available, he deserves, my predecessor, Councilman Noach Deer, Justice of the Supreme Court, who was taken at the prime of his life, somebody who had given so much to his community, somebody who was a friend of mine, and a friend of so many, and who was a leader in our body for 18 years, was elected to the City Council when I was still in my single digits, and I've known him practically my entire life, and it was a shocking and tremendous loss, which is not to belittle the losses that all communities in this city have seen. We have all lost so many. My grandmother passed away last week, Monday. The Novominsker Rebbe, who was a giant in Torah Jewry, who gave so much of his life to help build our community here in America, was taken from us prior to his time in a tragic way.
30 seconds.
My own Rosh Yeshiva of Ger, Herv David Alevsky, and of course, this needs to be mentioned, the dozens and dozens of names that I know, people who were able to escape the brutality of Hitler and the Nazis, and who were survivors of the Holocaust, and whose numbers I touched on their arms, who have lost their lives in the last several days and weeks. And I honor their memory, and I will continue doing that. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilmember Yeager. And we will now hear from Councilmember Levin and then Cabrera.
Councilmember Levin,
Thank
your
you,
time
Madam.
will start now.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. I just want to echo my colleague's sentiments in extending our condolences to everybody that has lost a loved one, everybody who has gone through a painful illness. This has been one of the darkest hours that our city has ever known. And it is devastating and heartbreaking for all of us, and we extend our love to everybody in New York City who is suffering today. We want to acknowledge all of the tremendous work that our healthcare workers, our first responders, everybody that's going to work in every essential capacity, grocery stores, pharmacies, delivery workers, people working at an auto body shop or tire changing place, everybody that's doing a tremendous amount of putting themselves out on the line in the service of your fellow New Yorker. We express our gratitude. Colleagues, I am introducing a piece of legislation today as well, Intro 1927, which would extend to individuals in shelter, in a congregate setting, or in unsheltered environment, the right to a hotel room during this crisis. The fact of the matter is there are still thousands upon thousands of New Yorkers who are in congregate shelters. Is a very dangerous and risky place to be, and we owe it to them to be able to give them an appropriate setting so that we can avoid an outbreak on our watch in our shelter system. So I ask my colleagues to sign on to Intro 1927. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Cabrera.
Thank you so
Councilmember
much.
Cabrera, your time will start now.
Thank you so much. And I can see the time clock, so no need for the reminder of 30 seconds. But I want to take a moment to thank the speaker, to all my colleagues very early on. As you know, my son came down with coronavirus. I was probably the first elected official to have a family member go through this. I had all kinds of feelings. I was scared. I was upset. I was, I think I felt all the feelings that a father could feel. And then my daughter came down with it, their spouses, my grandchildren. And the reason I'm mentioning this right now, I don't want us to go through what we could have done before. We couldn't have done the quarantine before. We should have done the testing, the appropriate testing, and we were not prepared. And so we're talking about inequities right now. Let me just say that I'm hopeful that we're not waiting until this is over for the inequities to be taken care of. We need to address them now. Now that we're going to have antibody tests, they're already started. They should be in the deepest, hardest hit area should be taking place. In areas that was most affected, the help needs to come now. This recession is going to last. It's not going to be gone in a year. It's going to take years for us to recover. So we need to be wise. We need to appropriate all the funding that we need, and we need to do it now as we go through this budget, and to be able to stand proud in June to make sure that we have a good budget for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Councilmember Rose.
Councilmember Rose, your time will start now.
Thank you. Like all of my colleagues, I want to say thank you to the speaker, our colleagues in government, for all of their efforts on behalf of the citizens of New York City. But I want to thank more especially the first responders and the essential workers for all that they have done and their selfless efforts to keep all of us safe and healthy. You know, there were some inequities in terms of treatment within the categories of first responders and essential workers. And I hope that we are going to make sure that that doesn't happen, that the workers who are working in the nursing homes and the group homes and in the shelters are equally as protected as the workers in other areas, that, you know, none of our civil servants should have to put their lives in in jeopardy. So I want us to continue to fight for them. And I want to say to teens in charge, take charge, that of course we're going to fight for SYEP, and that my colleagues are behind us, and we're going to make sure that there is some kind of programming for young people this summer. So you don't have to waste your efforts on us. Go talk to the administration about saving SYEP. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Rose, and thank you so much for your leadership and your fight for our young people. Now, Councilmember Holden.
All right, thank you, everyone, and certainly
Councilmember Holden, your time will start now.
Thank you again. I want to thank Corey Johnson, Speaker, did a great job during the pandemic, along with Jason Goldman, to set up this historic meeting, which is I love being part of the City Council. But doing this is such a task, I can imagine, and I want to thank them again. I want to thank my great staff who are working really hard during this pandemic, and it puts a lot of stress on everyone. But also, I want to just mention about the people who have lost loved ones. And right now, I have a lot of cemeteries in my district, and we're seeing a lot of funerals, but the cemeteries have cut back on their burials because of the lack of staff. So they need help. I wrote to the mayor, wrote to the governor a number of times, try to get the out of work construction workers to help out in the cemeteries and get paid for it. Because we're waiting now, families are calling me, they're waiting 2 and 3 weeks for funerals. And it really puts more stress on them, obviously. So we really need to step up as a city and help out the cemetery. So thank you again, everyone, and really stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob, to you and Amy, and to your kids and grandkids.
Thank you. Are there any other members who are on the list to speak, parliamentarian?
No, Madam Majority Leader, there are no other members.
I just want to close out by thanking again Speaker Corey Johnson and all my colleagues here today. This is historic and it's unprecedented, and there's nothing harder, I would say, that all of us have experienced as being leaders to have to lead from inside. We naturally want to be up front. We naturally want to be at the forefront. And for me, as a mom of a 2-year-old with 2 parents that are both over the age of 80, it has been the hardest thing as a leader to have to stay indoors and to have to lead my community at the same time. But I want to thank this council because you all have led the efforts from everything from fighting to close our schools, to alternate side of the street parking suspensions, to closing our playgrounds, for the fight for our small businesses, for the fight for PPE, because we know that we sent many people, many Black and brown people, many women of color onto the front lines without protective gear. And it's a tragedy that they were sent out in that way. And we're going to do everything that we can in our council to fight for them, to make sure that we right these wrongs and that we continue to fight for them, because they have made it so that many of us could lead from inside. So I want to thank everybody, especially on the council, for what we did to get emergency food aid to many of our shut-ins, for many of our seniors who could not go out and get food, who could not go out and get the packages of food from the food pantries and the deliveries that have been made. I want to lift up mutual aid in one community in my district who've been working with our NYCHA tenant leaders, many of them who are senior citizens who are out on the front lines getting the food for the seniors, and they themselves can't be out there and should not be out there. And I just want to thank my staff. It's so hard to call staff to give them an assignment and you find out that they're on their way to the hospital, or they have to get tested, or their kids are sick, or their parents are sick. This has been really a very challenging time, and I just want to lift up, while there have been so many passings in my district, I want to lift up Dr. Roy Hastick, who is the founder of the Chamber of the Caribbean American Chamber of Commerce, who is a king of Brooklyn, who has done so much to advance local businesses in the Caribbean community, as well as Pastor Gwen Dingle, who has been a fighter and a champion on the front lines of the HIV movement. She is a powerful leader, and we are so sorry that we have lost her as well. And we're going to continue to look forward and to continue to lead. And thank you so much. And I beg of you, please stay home. This is not over. While the numbers are leveling, this is far from over, and we have to continue to stay at home, practice social distancing, to wear our masks, and to take this very seriously. So with that, Speaker Corey Johnson, I turn it over you to close out this meeting. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for bringing this body together. And thank you for hosting this unprecedented meeting that has kept us all at home today, and is a thankful wish to Earth Day that we were not out there and gave the Earth a break. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader, for those incredibly moving closing remarks. I'm really grateful for your leadership. And I just want to wrap up by thanking all of you, all of the members of this body who have been working around the clock to serve your constituents and to look out for the future of New York City. I want to echo and reiterate some of the, I think, very poignant and smart and helpful remarks that the Majority Leader just gave, especially as it relates to how we're all in this together. We need to continue to practice social distancing. You know, 3 weeks ago, we were losing 900 New Yorkers a day. Now the number is down to about 450, half of that. But that is still an astounding number of people who are dying every single day of COVID-19 in New York City. And as painful and difficult as it is for New Yorkers to be socially distanced right now and physically isolated, it is so important for us to do that because we need to relieve and keep that pressure off of our healthcare system. We need to think about these healthcare heroes, making their jobs easier. These folks that are scared every single day, leaving their homes, leaving their loved ones and their children, going into work to save other people. We need to think about these grocery store workers who are getting on the subway every single day, leaving their homes so that New Yorkers can still get food. We have to think about the NYPD officers and the firefighters and the correction officers, the subway conductors and the bus drivers, the postal workers and the pharmacists. All of these workers that are keeping our city going right now, they are our heroes. And we are immensely, immensely grateful for what they have done during this time. We need to lift them up by making sure they are protected and paid better, but also to keep them safe by continuing the social distancing that's in place. We're going to have to start to have the conversation about what mass testing looks like, about what contact tracing looks like, about what surveillance looks like, so that we can actually go at this virus and take it and do our best to make sure that we are able to safely at some point reopen and do it in the right way, not in a rushed way or a rash way, but in a smart way by looking at what other cities and countries and around the world have been doing. This city council, I want New Yorkers to know, all of the members have been working every single day to serve their communities and to look at these broader issues that are affecting our great city. I think it's important to level with New Yorkers about how difficult this is and how the days ahead are going to be difficult, but also talk about the hope that I have. It's going to be difficult because there's going to be a shared sacrifice involved. A shared sacrifice as it relates to making painful budget decisions we would never want to contemplate. Difficult because we're going to have to continue, even when we start to try to reopen in a small way with mandatory mask wearing and social distancing and the things that are going to be required of us. These things are going to change our way of life, but I am hopeful. And I am hopeful because our city is the greatest city in the world, and it's the greatest city in the world not because of our geography, but because of the 8.6 million New Yorkers who live here. They are the beating heart of New York City. They are the soul of New York City. We are the most diverse city in the United States of America. Queens County is the most diverse county in the United States of America. And we have seen incredible sacrifice and solidarity during the last 5 to 6 weeks. We have seen neighbors take care of neighbors. We have seen people do food deliveries. We have seen these essential workers put their lives on the line. We have seen young people delivering groceries to older people. We have seen all of this in one of the most painful moments in our history. And I have hope that we can get through this. We will be a changed city. Our city will not be the same, but we can still come back if we remain united, if we are compassionate and kind and strategic and thoughtful about how to get through this. And that is going to require us looking at some of the hard and glaring truths that exist, the truths on disparities, the truths on structural racism that exist in our society. And I hope that we can take this moment as a transformation point. In the 1940s, after the war, the UK decided to set up the NHS, their National Healthcare Service, knowing they needed to do something transformational. It is my hope that we'll be able to do something transformational here. Healthcare needs to be a basic civil right, not tied to employment and not tied to profit. We need to make sure that all New Yorkers are being protected. And you have seen these frontline workers, most of them Black and brown people, most of them Black and brown women who have continued to step up day after day. We need to recognize that. We need to honor them and protect them and make decisions that are going to help them and their families moving forward. That is the best way to actually honor the lives of all of the New Yorkers that we have lost. Our North Star in this budget process and moving forward is to take care and protect the most vulnerable, to ensure that we are doing right by all of these families that have lost loved ones and the families that continue to sacrifice every single day. These glaring holes in our social safety net when it comes to housing and food and healthcare and wages are more glaring than ever right now in the midst of this pandemic. But if we stay united, if we stay one New York, just like we got through the fiscal crisis of the 1970s, just like we got through 9/11 together, just like we got through the Great Recession together, and just like we got through Hurricane Sandy together, we can get through this. But we need to look out for our young people and our seniors and our public housing residents and our healthcare workers and our essential workers and all of these folks that are counting on us. That needs to be our North Star. So I am incredibly grateful for the staff that made today possible. I'm grateful to all of you for being part of this historic meeting today. We have committee hearings coming up tomorrow and Friday and next week. And I want to thank you all for your solidarity and for your continued support and working together to help our city get out of one of the biggest crises that we've ever faced. So I want to thank you, Madam Majority Leader, for doing a wonderful job today in being the presiding officer of this meeting. I want to thank Lance Pallavi for being our parliamentarian and doing a great job. I want to thank all the sergeants who have been on the call, led by Carl D'Alba, our Director of Security. I want to thank Jason Goldman, my Chief of Staff, and all of the central staff members at the council and district office members who have been working remotely, serving constituents, getting us up and going, drafting bills, working on the city's budget. We have been working around the clock, and we will continue to do that. So with that, Madam Majority Leader, I want to sign off and tell New York City, I love you. We love this great city, and we will get through this together. So with that, the stated meeting of April 22nd, 2020 is now adjourned. Godspeed. Be safe, New York City. We're here for you.